This is the Commonwealth, where we talk with creators of disruptive change. Our guest this episode is the folk singer-songwriter Andrea Von Kampen. Andrea's music has nearly 250,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. She's announced national tour dates for the rest of the summer and recently signed to the same label as James Taylor and Paul Simon. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, the James Taylor and Paul Simon thing was like a whole, changed my, because I've followed you for quite some time, but then, then I was like, oh, she signed a new record label. I was like, James Taylor and Paul Simon. That's pretty crazy.
It's wild, especially because those two men are sort of like my biggest legends when I think about who I listened to in my childhood.
Same
like
here,
those were just like the classics. And it's absolutely wild. It's crazy. Try not to think about it. Hoping to do a collab. I don't know.
When you sign to a label, you don't meet the other talent necessarily.
No.
Right?
And in fact, in COVID, I haven't met any of these people. This has all been Zoom stuff. So I think I'm signed, but I don't know. Maybe this is all an illusion. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Our show's recently gone through a string of interviewing a whole bunch of musicians. And that just, I think, kind of happenstance maybe. But it's been interesting to hear the artists talk about how they spent their pandemic. And it seems like you had a very, very busy pandemic.
Yeah. Well, when the pandemic started, I was originally very stressed and sort of what am I going to do? We were on a tour to the West Coast and back. And on the way down, the signs on the interstate said stuff how many people had died in that state, all the depressing signs.
Yeah.
And then on our way back from LA, it was shelter in place. It was the whole narrative had changed, the world changed. And I was initially really stressed about this. And then I remember reading something about how some people who were really successful through the 2008 financial crisis were the people who just kept acting like everything was okay, kept doing their job. And I thought, you know what? That's what I'm gonna do. And was I successful throughout all of it? No. But I got myself into gear. I finished writing my full-length record, my second one. Got in the studio from March to August. We tracked the whole thing, mixed the whole thing.
Wow.
Signed on a manager in August, shopped the record out to labels, signed, and then here we are.
That's really good advice. Next global crisis, I'm going to apply that.
And it seems there might be more coming up. So, maybe...
Just ongoing global crisis.
This is the survival guide today.
Yes. So your album, That Spell, comes out August 6th. And when did you start writing it? How you mentioned March is when you got in the studio. So March of 2020, right when the pandemic hit?
So March of 2020, I probably had 4 of the songs written. And I knew that I was working towards a full length. And so those first 4 songs I'd probably written that winter. Yeah, because I was in Italy for a month fromOctober. Yeah, the month of October I was in Italy. And then I got back in November and I was I know I want to start working on my next full length because I had made a soundtrack for my Italian thing.
Okay, what were you in Italy for?
I was shooting a film.
Okay.
I was shooting an independent film. I was dabbling in acting. Yeah, I'm actually the lead.
Whoa, is it out yet? Or
no.
Okay.
No. So anyways, enough about that.
That can sidetrack the whole conversation. I'm interested though. I'm interested
right. So I had spent that summer, I don't know what summer that would be now. This is a long time ago, writing that soundtrack for that film. Because that film is a music movie kind of thing.
Okay.
Shot the film, got back, and I was now I need to make my full length. Enough of other people's projects. I'm going to write my next record. So probably November, December, I start working on it. Then we get busy with touring, pandemic hits, finish writing it. That's kind of how it went.
Okay. And what's your approach to writing music? How it must come pretty natural to you.
Yeah. Well, my approach is sort of like a job. Okay. So I don't wait to be inspired because it's never going to happen. Right. So what I do is when it's time to write, I devote an hour or 2 every single day to write until the thing is done. So even if it's the worst 2 hours of my life and I'm just sitting there and everything sounds like crap, I put in the hours. And usually I'll have 1 or 2 bad days and then a really good day. And so it'll be from 9 to 11 every single day I'm going to write. And the other thing is when I'm not writing, I'm reading a ton.
Okay.
So I try to read a book a week. And so I'm constantly getting inspiration. I'm constantly stealing lines, stealing quotes, watching documentaries, and so I just have journals of ideas so that when I get those 2 hours to write or 1 hour and I'm doing it for maybe 4 to 6 weeks, I have tons of things to pull from.
What do you read?
A lot of fiction, a lot of biographies.
Okay.
Yeah, just a ton of stuff. And I usually have like one on Audible and one that I'm like reading.
Okay.
And I kind of go back and forth. And,
all right, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm a big podcast guy, obviously, so I listen to a bunch of
oh yeah, me too.
Yes. And Audible, especially if you get a good. My last book I listened to was Obama's recent book.
Great book.
It was 30 hours long, but I could hear Obama talk for 30 hours long.
Oh, me too. Yeah. And have you listened to Michelle's? That one's really good too.
I've heard great things. I have not. I've not listened.
Both of those are great.
What's your go-to book suggestion?
That's a great question. So at the end of last year, I read a book called Hamnet.
Okay.
Hamnet. It was sort of a fictionalized book around Shakespeare's son. Like right after he wrote Hamlet, it's like he had a son named Hamnet, and his younger son Hamnet died, and then he writes Hamlet. Very weird.
Okay.
So there's like some, people are like hypothetically wondering what was going on, and it's kind of a book that's fictional but infused with some true life things. It's really interesting.
Do you always put 2 hours on your calendar to write? Like
no, only when I'm feeling like I need to write a record.
Okay.
No, so like like when it's time to write, it's time to write. So like right now I'm sort of casually working on my next idea that I have, and I'm not being very militant about it. But when I feel that pressure, like I want to get it done, I'll go back to my very scheduled writing session time.
Okay, makes sense. And are you the type of creative person that likes to show your ideas to other people, or do you prefer to flesh it all out and then?
So I like to have a song fleshed out, and then I like to record it in my home studio, and then I like to listen to it. So that's the other thing. So right now I have like 5 songs written for this new project I'm doing, and I'll just put the 5 songs in a SoundCloud link and like take a walk and listen to them, because that's sort of a way I can edit it then.
So you write like every single portion of like the both the lyrics and the instrumental. It is all Andrea Von Kampen's?
98% of the time. There's one song on my new record that I've co-written, and I co-wrote it with my brother.
All right. Okay. Who is a music professor, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing music family. So and then what's the process of shopping an album around?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's like one way to describe it. My personal experience was like my manager sort of sent emails, talked to people, and then, had some interest. And then from there we had Zoom calls, and I sort of like found the right fit for me and for the music. Okay. And that was sort of how it went. But I think there are a lot of different ways to do it. And
because you were an independent artist up until this album, right?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to take this one to a label?
There were a lot of reasons. One being that it was getting to be too much work to do on my own. Like Old Country did pretty well, and it's a very complex sort of job. Like there's just a lot of layers to it. Like when you think about merch and just trying to be the artist and things like touring and distributing and all that sort of stuff, there's so many layers. And it's like, I didn't really know if I could do all those layers super well anymore. It was just getting to be a lot of work. So sort of like taking the burden off and being able to like truly being an artist again was alluring. But then also, I was just kind of ready to go for it. Like I don't know if I hit my independent music ceiling, but like my last record, Old Country, got like 20 million streams or something. It's like we did really well on our own. Like, let's see where this can go. Hope that number's right. Hope it wasn't like, 20,000, because that's going to be really bad.
so I was trying to counter on Spotify, like beyond the followers of like how many streams it did. And then I was like, I'm not going to do math.
And I don't even know if that's right. But it was a good million number.
Yeah, that's a lot. Like in the millions is a lot. So
and so it was like, we did pretty well. Like, let's just go for it. Like I've been doing this for 5 years, totally independent, and I'm just ready to try a different approach.
Yeah, and why Fantasy Records?
Well, Fantasy is very artist friendly, and from the beginning, they were really excited about the music, which is what really excited me, because I think there's a lot of different places you could go with where it's sort of like, in the streaming world now, it's just sort of like an easy paycheck. Like if you sign an artist who's already got a lot of streams, it's sort of like, we can just keep building the streaming and this will be really great. But in terms of like the whole picture, we don't know how much we'll do. Like you might still want to like find your own people to do certain facets of it. Whereas like Fantasy was very excited about me as an artist, which was really exciting because it wasn't just about like really developing one facet, but kind of working like in a holistic way with the whole picture.
Okay, so like the holistic way, you mentioned merch, streaming. What other components have they onboarded that I guess have been elevated in doing so?
Yeah, well, sort of like all the different streaming channels and stuff, like, and then also like the YouTube presence and sort of like helping with videos and content and sort of, having these people who are really good at TikTok giving me ideas. And it's like, just sort of, they have people in every department working on it, which is really cool because, yeah, it's a lot to do on your own.
Yeah, yes. And even the past couple of weeks, I've followed the amount of playlists that your releases have been featured on. And it's a cross-platform, too. It's like not just Spotify, it's Apple. And I'm sure that is a huge help.
Yeah.
Is there anything about being indie that you miss?
Yeah, I mean, I think I miss feeling like I was totally in control. And I don't feel like I'm a control freak until I realize, like, no, I am. Like, something will happen. You'll be like, oh, wait, no, this is why I am a control freak. I think just knowing that, like, it was all me doing it, like, sort of was something I took pride in and maybe, like, a little bit, I don't know. I think that's the biggest thing is, like, feeling like I did this and then this is where we got, and I feel like I controlled that even though I didn't at all. I mean, like the Spotify gods, the Amazon gods, who knows what they're doing. But I think just like feeling like I was holding the reins was sort of exhilarating, and having to like loosen that and like listen to other people's ideas has definitely been like a good exercise in letting go.
Interesting perspective. So you have six dates announced, and I was just looking at the calendar. I think one is going to happen between like the time we're recording this and when it's released. But so 5 future dates on the calendar. Are you excited to perform live again?
So excited.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love playing live shows. And I just cannot wait.
Yeah. So what's touring like? You mentioned going on a national tour very heavily leading into the pandemic. I'm sure it gets tiresome. We had a live event at here Grand Island a few weeks ago, and we were talking to Rascal Martinez, who's a Nebraska-based musician, and he was saying in 2019 he performed 200 live shows, and it was shocking to me that I can't imagine being 200 different places throughout a year. So I'm sure that component is exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have never done 200 dates in a year, so I cannot speak to how exhausting that is. I'm sure that is like way more exhausting than anything I've done. But
even like the cross country that your tours consist of.
No, it is exhausting, and I think it's really easy to sort of get in this mindset of like, I'm tired. This is hard. Like, like my life is tough, and then I sort of step back, and it's sort of like, it is exhausting. There's no debating that. But like, this is so much better than anything else I could be doing. Like the fact that I get to play shows for people who want to listen is so exhilarating. And like the fact that I've gotten to a place where I can sell this many tickets in this market, like it's such a marathon of a career that it's really easy to get stuck in like, I don't really want to be in Des Moines tonight. Like I'd rather be home, like being with my friends at a bonfire. And yet like, if you just live like that, sort of like wishing every moment away, you never really enjoy where you are. And then it's almost like as things get better and better, you don't reflect on where like that this is like such an incredible like blessing to be in this place.
Yeah.
And so as exhausting as it is, I've really tried to find the mindset of like, wow, I get to play this city tonight. What the heck? Like 10 years ago, I would have been so psyched to like have a sold out show in San Francisco. Like, what the heck? I don't know anyone in this city. Like, and so I have really tried, and also I will say I've not been touring much, so let me tell you, I feel in 2 months like this is really I'm on a real like preaching trip right now, but I have tried to flip it on its head and say like it's exhausting, but like this is so incredible this is happening.
Yes, I will clip that out, and then on your next world tour, I'll shoot it your way in the midst of it.
I hate it. Get me out.
So you're performing at 2 upcoming festivals, and I love attending festivals as like an attendee.
Totally.
How different is it playing at a festival compared to just like a solo show?
Yeah, I mean, I think a festival, from the limited ones that I've done, there's just like a lot of camaraderie. It sort of is like a party. It's fun. And, there's less of like a rigorous schedule. And a lot of times like you might not be like there for one night, but a couple nights. So I think it's like a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more of like, oh, you get to see all these amazing artists and chat with them. And it's sort of like a weird, like, camp trip meets like business trip meets like, I don't know. It's weird. It's like, it's a very different vibe than like playing your own show in a city and then going to another city and playing your own show.
And the whole like, so like Backstage, there's that community similar to like out, like, cause, so I went to Bonnaroo a couple of years ago, and that is very much like a community among the people attending. Cool. But Backstage, is it similar?
I mean, I cannot speak to Bonnaroo.
No, but like,
at the places I've been, yes, it's fun. Just like a lot. I mean, and I think it's cool too, because it can be kind of isolating, especially like if you're playing solo shows, it's like maybe you and one other person for a while. And so then to have like this big group of people who all kind of get it and do the same thing, it's so fun, just like having like-minded people who understand the job all together. Yeah,
absolutely. That's what like from the crowd, I imagine that's what it's like Backstage. So it's cool that that's actually what it is.
Totally.
What it is. You mentioned appearing in the independent film.
Yes.
What other creative things are you hoping to do? Like, was the acting just like, I'm going to try it and it's going to be a one-time thing?
I don't know. So like I did some acting in college. I was like in some musicals and stuff, and I love that part of it. And I'm like such an extrovert, so I do sort of love that like group creative thing. That was the big reason why I did it. Also, like my friend was the director and I wrote all the music, so it was like a fun collaboration. So yeah, like I loved doing it, and I would totally act again. I don't know if I ever want to be the lead again. Like I want to get into like, like a small role where I can just like hang out for a few weeks with actors and just like have a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I would totally be open to that. I don't know. I just like, I love telling stories. I love creating things. And I guess like with all of that, I just am sort of like kind of down for anything that comes my way in terms of like the ability to tell stories in like a meaningful, creative way.
Okay. Have you thought about like writing a book or writing poetry, like beyond music, or are you just focused
No, I haven't thought about writing a book or poetry, but I have sort of thought about maybe doing like more soundtracks would be really fun.
Okay.
Like pairing with like a filmmaker and making the soundtrack for something. That would be great. Maybe like musicals. I don't know.
We mentioned that your brother is a music producer. Is your whole family musical? And like, have you always been musical, or when did this start?
Yeah. So my dad's a musician. He teaches at a college. He's a choir director. And my mom's also musical, and they just, music was sort of like the family thing. Like I have a lot of friends who, their parents told them growing up, like, you're not gonna be a musician, like, you can play clarinet in band, but you're not doing it afterwards. And for us, it was like, this is what we do. Like, probably you're not good at anything else. Like, just like learn an instrument. And, my brothers were in a band growing up. My brothers are a little bit older than me. So like growing up, I was like selling merch at merch tables and watching them play live shows. And it was just like a very normal thing to do. So it was like only fitting that I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll write songs too. And we've got guitars sitting around, so I might as well just start doing that.
You're writing your first song, was that like a same time frame, very, very young age?
No, for a while I was just like doing a lot of covers, and like my dad and I would get like asked to do like weird gigs and stuff. My dad's a choir director, but he also plays guitar and like can do like covers and stuff. So we got asked to write a local real estate jingle.
Okay.
That was like probably our first gig, and I think they paid us like $500, which like as a 10-year-old was like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna be so wealthy. Yeah. Like if these gigs continue, I think my dad and I split it. But anyway, so
good for him for splitting it.
I know, he's great. But yeah, like we did that, and then like we like played a show in like a church basement where like they paid us in like backpacks. So like I was already like just doing like weird stuff. But it wasn't until I went to college and studied music ed, and I hated studying it so much, and I just like knew I wanted to be a performer. But I also knew that like it wasn't really going to happen if I couldn't write my own songs. Like I didn't want to just play other people's songs for the rest of my life. Like, so I remember like sitting in my dorm room sophomore year, and I'm like, okay, it's time. Like I'm going to write my first song. And I just like started playing these 3 chords, and in like 4 minutes I wrote a song called Train Song. And that was the first song of mine that did really well. So I put that out on another day. And that was my first EP. And it ended up getting into like evening acoustic, and it did really well. So it was sort of like, okay, I guess I can do this. Now, like fast forward, it's a lot more work than just sitting down and playing 3 chords, but my first try went really well. So it was sort of like, okay, like I'm going to just keep doing this and just, hopefully this keeps working out.
Do you think you've had like a big break? Like the NPR Tiny Desk submission, so your first NPR Tiny Desk submission was you were a finalist of the contest. So NPR has a Tiny Desk, and then which is like very famous on YouTube. But go look it up if you're not familiar. And then every year they have a contest for independent musicians, and if you win the contest, you get on NPR's Tiny Desk, and you were a finalist in that contest, which is a very, very big deal. Do you think of that as your lucky break? Do you think that you have had a lucky break?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. And I think it's sort of interesting because we live in a very weird time where there can be a lot of middle-class musicians who are making a full-time living and doing well, but they're not like big stars. And so because of streaming, it's sort of been it's sort of like the floodgates have opened for this like middle-class musician. And I feel like that's sort of what I've been lucky to get into. But like, has anything been overnight? Has anything been like, first no one knew about me and then everyone did? Not at all. I mean, it's been a total marathon of like sort of this and then maybe an exciting thing and then like it's normal again. I mean, because even like I like made this arrangement of Forever Young for this like Welsh Christmas ad, and that like did ridiculously well. Like it's on like
2.7 million views.
Fox News and it's on like ABC and I'm like, what the heck? And like my friend Tom, who's the Welsh guy who owns this store, is like going on BBC America, like BBC Live to talk about this. And everyone in the comments is like warning me about like, okay, now you're gonna be famous, like don't screw this up. And I'm thinking like, no, I'm not. like this is great, this is exciting, but like, is this a big break? I don't think so. Like this is a Welsh hardware ad. The song is doing well, and it was like one good helpful thing, but like there hasn't been one thing that I can point to as like the day that I made it. It's just sort of been an upward slow trend. And that's why I like sort of keep alluding or like using this metaphor of a marathon, because I also don't necessarily know if it's helpful to have one big break, because I think you want a career you can sustain. So it's like if all of a sudden after a year one massive thing hit, there'd be so much I wouldn't have had in place. And it's sort of like you almost grow as you fall. Like you want to grow steadily so that you have this like sustainable fanship that helps you to keep making records your whole life. Yeah, yes. I thought of that. So you're on TikTok, right? Do you remember the song right at the start of the pandemic, the Bored in the House, Bored? Yeah. So that track got like 200 million songs, but then I was looking at his Spotify very recently, and then like his second one, like he had this huge viral success, but it hasn't been able to sustain an audience. So I think that's, I guess, just a very smart and just sharp approach, that the whole marathon mindset. And so you mentioned this middle class of artists. I think that's also very interesting. And kind of from like, I guess, an outsider looking in on it. Does streaming provide enough revenue? Because like the whole streaming has like upended the music industry over the last decade. But like, is Spotify and Apple Music, and we can talk like very broadly about this, not specific to you. Yeah. But like, I guess, are they, is that middle class coming only from streaming, or is it just like Patreon and merch and all of these different revenue streams? Or like, can you, I guess, kind of just provide some insight on exactly like how this middle class is forming? Yeah, so I would say that before streaming really took hold, the gateway to getting your music heard was through a label, radio, having a big budget behind it. And then streaming takes hold and suddenly anyone can upload anything from anywhere. So now we have people from all over the world able to upload their stuff. And if people hear it, if someone in these streaming sites hear it and gives it a platform, suddenly you have someone who didn't have to use the gatekeepers. And so you have this whole community of people who are able to kind of bypass the traditional label. Now, does that mean they're making $60K a year from streaming? Probably not right off the bat. But does it mean that maybe they can sell 20 tickets in a city they've never been to because suddenly people are listening? Yes. And that's not something that could traditionally happen with without a label historically. So now you have these people who can sort of build their own careers based on this tool. But the other thing, the flip side of it is now everyone can upload something. And so the competition is fiercer than ever. And these playlists are super coveted and it's really hard to get heard. And you know, how many songs, like 30,000 songs are uploaded a day to Spotify. So there is a flip side to it. But I think that it's still probably a really good thing that people can do this now. So I think it's not just streaming, it's like what streaming provides.
And I do think it's generally a good thing that more people have access to this.
Absolutely.
So this show is produced in Nebraska. You are based out of Lincoln, Nebraska. Do you plan to always stay in Lincoln?
No, probably Omaha. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, I mean, I love Nebraska. So I'm a big Nebraska fan. I love the people here. I love the landscape. My family is from here. So I think I always want to have sort of a footing here. I think I always want to be able to come back to Nebraska, you know, especially like as touring picks up, it's like a great place to come home to. But I do think that there'll be times in my life, hopefully, where I do need to be somewhere else for a while, whether it's for creative purposes or, you know, a project I'm working on. So, yeah, I think I'll always want to be able to come back to Nebraska, though.
Okay. And then the other question kind of in this realm of Nebraska, I hear Nebraskans talk about how vibrant the Nebraska music scene is, but it's one of those like when like the only people talking about it are like inside the community. Like how vibrant do you think the Nebraska music scene is?
Yeah, I think that it is supportive. I think it's, I think like it was really good for me when I was first starting to be able to play a lot, which is a great benefit of like Lincoln and Omaha, is being able to get those opening slots or, you know, be able to get into the venues. But I do think that it took me going to other markets to realize different ways that other markets are supportive. So like, I would play in Boston and the audience would be silent and they were listening. And it was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like no one's asking me if I know this cover or if I can play this like, you know, jam band song on my solo guitar. And I realized like there's different ways that communities can be supportive of artists. And I would love for Lincoln to have like that listening room. I would love for Lincoln to have that place that like a singer-songwriter can really come and tell a story. And it doesn't have to be like the accompaniment to like a good night. People can be there to hear the music. I think that's one thing that I'd really like to see Lincoln have.
Yeah, and every venue I think of, it's definitely like like we'll go to Duffy's, love Duffy's, huge shout out to Duffy's, but like the music is like an aspect of there. It's not like the sole reason you're there. Yeah. And I especially like in the past, there were a lot of events where it's like, you know, we're doing this 3-hour event where we're like, you know, selling whatever, and we think it'd be so fun to have music. And it's like, that would be fun, but like as someone who's trying to get people to listen to their songs, I want a listening audience. I don't want a passive audience. And so I think finding more spaces for listening audiences is really key. Yeah, interesting. So last question for you, Andrea. Do you have advice for aspiring musicians? And as example, to make it slightly personal, my girlfriend just came out with her second studio track.
Awesome.
So like you aspiring musician. So I'm kind of asking this question for her, but it's also like relevant for like, you know, aspiring singer-songwriters across Nebraska and on YouTube.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think like there's a lot of trappings when you first start of like, if I don't go to Nashville or LA or New York, if I don't like work with the right people, this stuff is just never going to get heard. And I need to like spend X number of dollars to feel like this has a chance of seeing the light of day. And I don't think that's true. I think especially where we live, the world we live in today, like write really good songs, make stuff as true to yourself as you can, like find the right person that you can afford and start there. And then like grow it as you grow. Don't feel like you have to like go straight to what you think will make you successful in terms of like the business side of it. Like start where you can and start with what you can do and then like grow it from there. Okay.
A+ advice. A+ advice. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Stream Andrea's new album on August 6th. August 6th. Stream it wherever you listen to music. Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is a product of KZUM Radio and Hurrdat Media. The show is edited by Kyle Kua. Hunter Bergman is the producer. What up, Hunter? Yeah, and Ashley Hansen does social media promotions. We release episodes every single Monday, so follow so you don't miss a beat.